Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 104 of the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Podcast, brought to you by Wolf Precision Incorporated. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to talk about bullets, BC, and BS. We're going to talk about a couple tricks and tips and techniques, how you can shoot better, and how to suck less when it comes to long range shooting, and maybe change your hunting thinking forever. So we're going to throw out there our 2 cents, things that we've learned to help people train better, shoot better, and be able to put that bullet where it's supposed to go every single time. And we want to share with you some of the tricks and techniques that for some shooters might make you more successful in the field as well. So without further ado, part 1 of our series, here we go. Before we get started, I would like to say a quick thank you to Krieger Barrels. Krieger is a proud sponsor of the show and maker of fine cut rifled barrels. They also have their new Krieger Direct, where you can log on, purchase your barrel, and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you need a barrel and need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. I'd also like to thank Trigger Tech, maker of fantastic triggers for both custom and many aftermarket replacements for your factory rifle. So if you want to shoot better and you want to upgrade your rifle, a great place to start is your trigger. You can stop over to TriggerTech.com. That's TriggerTech.com today. All right, so we just finished up a long-range shooting school, and as always, I learned something new in every class. It's absolutely fascinating. We really want to say thank you for the folks that took the time to come in, fly in, drive in, and spend time with us here at the school. We had great weather. It was 80 degrees and sunny on Monday, and on Wednesday, well, let's just say that we had the heaters on, and it was quite chilly with 25-mile-an-hour winds, but a great learning experience nonetheless. So I want to share with you some thoughts that really has come to light over the years, and I talk a lot about the different calibers and why I like them so much, and then this is going to be part 1, and we're going to talk about bullets, BC, weight of rifles. And really just tell you the truth that if you want to be a great shooter, your equipment has a lot to do with it. And honestly, today's lightweight rifles and the combination of what the new calibers are capable of doing, I want to throw some examples out there of this. You could really become a world-class shooter, and these types of rifles allow you to do it faster and faster and faster. So before I get into too much with, how and why and where this comes from, and this particular class was pretty awesome. So we had a gentleman that was in his mid-60s who shot competitively most of his life, professional in all of his careers, and certainly quite a great guy to hang out with, but shot competitively, F-class. I mean, he was just a world-class shooter. He could shoot. He came to the school to learn new techniques and really just try to get just some edges in all the things that he does. But right out of the gate, it was a pleasure to have him here, but no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Great shooter, right? In the very same class, we had a gentleman who is getting ready to go on his first sheep hunt and never really shot a rifle at all. I mean, he knows how to shoot a rifle, and he shot one at 100 yards, but never shot steel in his life, never shot anything at distance his entire life. My guess is he's probably in his 40s to 50s. No experience whatsoever. None. Zip zilch. So at the end of the class, the reason I bring these 2 gentlemen up is we have a shoot-off. We have a shooting test that we do, and we keep score, So we give away a hat. We call it the Top Gun hat. It's pretty cool. We hang it on a target board. Everybody signs it with their rifle at the end of the class, and somebody gets to take it home. It's just a nice souvenir for attending the school here. But what's absolutely amazing is that new shooter that never shot beyond 100 yards came within just a couple points of beating everybody else out in the class. Just a couple. I mean, he took second place overall, which is, my God, fantastic. His score, overall score, was at least 20 to 25% higher than our average shooter coming through on a normal windy day. So we had exceptional winds. We're talking, 18 to 20 sustained. We had gusts into the 20s and maybe higher as they were just ripping out across. In those conditions, which are certainly some of the more challenging conditions that the school has seen in the last year or two, he still scored 20% better than our average student coming through for the first time with half of those conditions. So I'm not going to say that I know everything and that I'm right and the world is wrong. That's just not me. But I am telling you there's something to this. Like, I was watching the magic happen over the last 3 days, and I sat back in fascination. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about it all night last night, coming into the shop this morning, about how I wanted to approach it on the podcast. And really, this is a big deal. And it's not been here or available to us as shooters for the longest time. This hasn't been something that we could do that we can do now with these modern rifles. So let me start back a couple years ago. We built some 6.5 Creedmoors that were going to be our hunting rifle, trying to stay lighter as far as, just a varmint rig or something we could carry around, shoot long range, but take some of the weight out of the 14 and 16-pound rifle. And so I built one for one of our instructors, and I think it was an 18.5-inch barrel, carbon fiber, and carbon fiber stock, reasonable weight. I think the rifle itself, without the optics and everything, was certainly under 10 pounds. And maybe with the optics and such, we were probably right around 10-pound-ish, between 10 and 11. And, even suppressed, he had commented a couple times about that hop of the rifle, how it still hops, So the curse to us as hunters is, as we reduce the weight to make the rifle more serviceable for us in the field or more usable for us in the field, easier for us to, take the wear and tear that it's going to put on us. As we reduce that, we reduce not only our shootability of it and our learning of it, our comfort in shooting it, but we really do lose an edge in how well we can run it. He had commented that even the 6.5 Creedmoor still had bipod hop, with a suppressor now, mind you. Without a suppressor, she jumped. And so when you take new shooters or hunters, the more you keep getting that hop and that recoil and that amount of energy and how quick the rifle comes back and hits you, the more that goes up, I really do think that the quality of your shooting starts to go down. At least the consistency of it or the potential of what you could do with it, right? 5 or 10 years ago, we had some 223s that we would run to 1,000 yards and shoot 75 grainers. And one of the gentlemen that had just come through the class here had attended one of the classes with 223s on the line. And when he first got here, he thought it was, amazing that, and sort of funny because he was shooting his 308, he's law enforcement, that he had all these 223s. And he thought it was a joke, that these guys were going to shoot to 1,000 yards with 223s and hit stuff. Well, not only was it not a joke, but they whooped butt. And the calibers were capable. They just weren't quite there yet to be 100% competitive. So I would run it in matches for fun, but when you got beyond 800 yards, it bled off energy so fast. It didn't hit steel real hard, so in really bad conditions like rain, snow, and such, you just wouldn't see the impacts as well. So we upgraded. We built the rifles heavier to keep the recoil way down. I mean, really heavy. And then we changed it to 6.5 Creed and shot factory ammo for a couple years. And I will tell you that the average shooter in the class paid the consequences for that. I mean, the hop, the movement, even though 6.5 Creedmoor doesn't jump around and move that much, in a 14 or 16-pound rifle, I'm telling you that, honestly, a lot of them didn't shoot as well if we would have given them a 223. Now, enter the 22 Creedmoor we've been running for, this will be our second year. One of the reasons why the 223 just fell a little short is it just didn't have the ballistic coefficient or the weight of the bullet. And they just weren't out yet. I mean, you had some 90 grain Sierras, but the BCs aren't all that great. And, we like to shoot bullets that expand and are good for other things like varmint hunting and such. But when Hornady introduced the 88 grain ELD match, that changes everything. And now all of a sudden you've got Berger with their 85 5s and 90 grainers, and you've got other manufacturers making these ultra heavy 22 caliber class bullets. It's amazing what they can do. And I think, where us as hunters, like the one gentleman that came through, that he was preparing for a sheep hunt. And I believe he built a 6.5 PRC and a light rifle. And what a world of difference it makes to the shooter removing all of that recoil. And how efficient you can train, how well you'll shoot. I mean, you just suck less. I mean, that's the best way I can say it is one of the dangers of dropping the weights of the rifles is even when we go down to what we think are small calibers like the 6.5 Creed and 6.5 PRC, it still has a hop and bounce that just doesn't settle and tame the rifle down. Just quite to the point where the normal person can master it easily, right? Now, there are lots of people that can shoot 300 Win Mags incredibly well. I don't want to put that out there that, everybody has to shoot small calibers to shoot good. That's not true. But we're talking about the average person here, the person that's going to want to practice and train that doesn't come to the table with all these just ungodly natural gifts that they can just shoot anything they want at any distance and it doesn't affect them. And the 223s proved that for more than a decade that we could take brand new shooters right out of the gate and put them on these low recoiling rifles, and they will hit gallon water jugs at 1,000 yards. They've done it in every class, and the gentleman we had in the class here, his name was Chan, he said that he was just stunned that, to hear these little 223s were ringing plates and breaking gallon water jugs at 1,000 yards like they've been doing it their whole lives. And it had to do with the combination of the weight of the rifle and the recoil. So when we built up these rifles now, and I have a 22 Creed in my hunting rifle, and I'm not trying to sell the 22 Creed. This isn't about the caliber itself. It's just about the tipping point that's happening right now and what these cartridges are capable of doing, as well as allowing the shooters themselves to shine. They don't have to worry about anything. They have nothing on their minds other than just pulling that trigger. The rifle stayed nice and calm, a little bit of bump, and it's off to the races. It's magical to watch. So let me give you some examples here. So we had a 22 Creed here at the school that shoots, broken, and you're going to get it right around 3160 feet per second, 88 grain ELD match, right? And BC of 545. We also had a 6mm on the line shooting a Burger, and we had a 6.5 shooting a 147. Well, and we're going to use a 143 grain ELD match in PRC and 6.5 Creed just to give you the example of the difference. There's a website called Varmint Ouch you can go and check out too. And he's a retired engineer, varmint hunter, and he put on his website under the shooting page a recoil calculator that not only tells you the energy of the recoil, but the velocity of the rifle as it's coming to the rear, which is a big one, by the way. The faster the rifle comes back and tracks, the snappier the recoil is as well. So rifles have two types of recoil. They have energy and velocity. And you sort of get stuck with both, right? Let's talk about and just compare the two smaller versions of these calibers. Let's just talk the 6mm and 22 Creed right out of the gate. The 6mm was shooting a 108 grain Burger. And the BC for that Burger was right around 517. And the customer hand loading it was around 3,000 feet per second. So 108 grain bullet, 3,000 feet per second, 517 BC. So the 22 Creedmoor, of course, it's a 88 grain ELD match we're shooting. The BC is 545. Velocity is 3180. Here's the difference. The recoil of the 6mm is 8.18 pounds on the shooter if you put it in a 10-pound rifle, right? And has 7.25 feet per second velocity as it comes to the rear. And you heard that right. It's 7.25 feet per second velocity coming to the rear at you. The 22 Creedmoor is 6.81 foot-pounds and 6.6 in velocity. Even though it's shooting an 88 grain bullet, it's still, and at the speeds, it's a lot less, right? Maybe around 15%. Now, let's talk about the 6.5 Creedmoor for a minute. The 6.5 Creedmoor, shooting 147 grain bullet, which was being shot here in the class, had recoil energy of 11.03 foot-pounds of energy. 11.3. That is just shy of double. And the bipod hop and everything else that goes around it. And then the speed coming back and hitting the shooter is 8.42 feet per second. The 6.5 PRC that this customer is going to shoot on his hunt is 12.15 foot-pounds of energy and 8.84 feet per second coming back and hitting you. Now, you wouldn't think a 22 class bullet could keep up with the 6mm. And, you're looking at the energy difference, and of course the 22 caliber has a little bit less energy difference, right? So you're going to save that recoil. But here's the thing that's magical about this, is that drops it down into almost 223 class territory, right? And then when you put a suppressor on it, it's even better. Oh my God, right? But now let's talk about hunting scenarios. Yes, at 100 yards, the 6mm has 1,866 foot-pounds of energy. The 22 Creed has 1,771, less than 80 foot-pounds of energy difference between the two. And at 600 yards, the 22 Creed has 991 foot-pounds of energy, almost 1,000. The 6mm with a heavier bullet, now mind you, is 992. 1 foot-pound difference. But once you get past 600 yards, the 22 Creedmoor starts to pass the 6mm. So, for example, at 1,000 yards, the 22 Creedmoor has 589 foot-pounds of energy. The 6mm has 563. And so it's not huge. You've got 20 or 30 or 40 more foot-pounds of energy, but you've also reduced the recoil and the felt recoil. So when we're long-distance shooters, so why are we shooting a heavier bullet that has more recoil, a little bit more hop, all of this stuff, when at close range, if we're killing things, there's not much difference between a 6 Creed and a 22 Creed as far as energy on target, although the sectional density on the 22 Creed, I believe, is higher because of the narrower bullet. But at distance, it outperforms it, right? You've got just so much better performance. And look at your drop, right? So even the 6mm shooting at 3,000 feet per second requires 7.6 mils. Now, you follow me on this? 7.6 mils. The 22 Creed requires 6.4. 1.2 mils less drop. That's a big deal if you're a hunter. I mean, you're narrowing your window for your high and low differences between being 10 and 15 yards off. But my God, you've got 6.4 mils compared to 7.6. That's amazing. Now, I know this is a lot to take because I'm trying to do some math over the podcast, but please bear with me here, right? Let's talk about the 6.5 PRC that we were just discussing with the energy on shooter over double of what the 22 Creed is. Yes, it has more energy at distance. Yes, at 600 yards, it's boasting 1,500 foot-pounds of energy, not 1,000. So you've got a third more energy on target, right? But you also have more than double the recoil. Double. Now we're talking a 6.5 PRC shooting nearly 3,000 feet per second with a BC of 625. So obviously a much higher BC, right? But you're still down to 954 pounds of energy at 1,000 yards compared to the 22 Creed that has 589 or nearly 600. So you got a 30% drop in energy at over 200% increase in the amount of punishment that you're taking as a shooter. So my point of this is that most shooters will see the negative effect of the recoil and learning the art only to see hardly marginal gains in their energy on target while depleting their quality of the shot. I personally think a lot of shooters would do a lot better running smaller calibers with really tough bullets, now mind you, and then keeping their shots within a decent distance. For example, I mean, you can say, well, I'm going to shoot a 6.5 PRC because I want to shoot an elk at 1,000 yards. Well, if you're going to do that with a 6.5 PRC and 143 grain ELDX that has 954 foot-pounds of energy, then how is not the 22 Creedmoor a 600-yard deer gun that has nearly 1,000 foot-pounds of energy? 1,000 foot-pounds of energy at 600 yards. That's not good enough. No, we have to shoot a PRC just in case we shoot 1,000 yards with less energy on target. 954 foot-pounds of energy on target. So do you see what I'm saying here? Like, I know the thinking behind it is, look, we're going after big game animals and we've got to knock them down and, we want this big hole. But if you're depleting the quality of shooters, young shooters especially, like small shooters, female shooters, children, you take some men, I hate to say it, some men don't shoot big calibers real well. Being voluntarily kicked by a mule, maybe some guys are tough enough to take that all day. Most people really aren't. They just don't have the ability to say no. It's expected that you have to shoot this big caliber. Like when I went out on an elk hunt, I got all kinds of grief because I took a 264 Win Mag, and guys are getting bent like they're going to have to chase my elk. They were shooting 300 Weatherbees and 300 Ultra Mag. It was like testosterone was built into the caliber for a reason. Look, I'm not about bragging rights. I don't care what other people shoot. I shoot what I shoot best. So if I knew I could shoot a 264 Win Mag unbraked in a reasonably weight rifle with around 12 pounds, and I could almost spot my own shots at distance pretty well, and I could enjoy shooting it all day. And I spent all summer shooting that rifle. I even shot it in some competitions, some local matches, just to see what I could do with it, right? Went woodchuck hunting all summer long with that. I was really efficient with that cartridge. I enjoyed shooting it, and it showed in my ability to shoot it. And so my point of this whole thing is, and this is just part one, we're going to talk about part two next when we get into next week's podcast. My point of this podcast is this, that for new shooters, what was amazing, absolutely amazing, is that we had a 6 Creed and a 6.5 Creed on the line who, with skilled shooters no less, like these guys have taken classes before. They're good shooters. But I think the new shooters learn faster, become more efficient, and certainly bring up the bar for competing in a very short period of time, simply because they're reducing the recoil down to not a hop, not a jump, not a push, but just a simple pulse of the rifle, making them really comfortable, really confident. They're spotting their own shots. They're having fun, and when they have fun, they'll shoot better every single time. So the 22 Creed, in the hands of a person who never shot a rifle before at any distance, had no practice with it, really never shot one. He was a bow hunter. And he comes in, and on day 2, he was shooting, we have a life-size coyote at 1,000 yards. It was amazing. When he'd hit it with the 22 Creed, you'd see the splash. When he hits the steel, it's ringing. He drilled 3 rounds on a 10 by 16-inch plate, probably that I could cover with the palm of my hand. And I believe half of that was because he was enjoying shooting the rifle. And he could consistently hold a higher level of accuracy simply because he was having fun and the recoil wasn't interfering with his ability to run it. It wasn't bouncing him, wasn't hopping him, wasn't frustrating him, wasn't pushing to get on target. He was having a lot of fun. All he had to do was focus on these minor things, and the rifle was just an extension of his body. There was nothing crazy happening. It wasn't beating him up. It wasn't bouncing up in the air, all of that. And it showed that he almost be a shooter that had nearly 40 years of experience shooting, and still shooting a 22 Creed, by the way. So they were even keel as far as competitor to competitor. He only lost by 1 shot. 1 shot. Amazing. And I've seen this over and over and over again with the 223. But, what can you say about the 223? I think it's a great cartridge. For deer hunting, that's what my daughter ran. But it just didn't have enough horsepower or powder capacity to push the heavy bullets. Like, really, if you're going to shoot at distance, you need to get above 77 grain, or you need the speed, right? And the 223 just didn't have enough case capacity to get that out there and get the job done. But enter in the 22 Creed. It's not a new kid on the block. It's been around for more than 10 years. People have been shooting it. Enter in world-class bullets now in 88 grain and 90 grain, and BCs that are beating the 6mm class. And now you've got a rifle that recoils 20% less than a 243, but will kick its ass at 1,000 yards with energy on target, and will maintain and keep the same energy as that 243 the whole way out, and eventually beating it at beyond there. I have an old book, just for real quick before we wrap up this podcast and talk about a couple quick things. I have an old book. I like to keep old reloading books and manuals around. Sometimes the information in there is pretty neat. And I have this old Redding reloading manual where a gentleman wrote an article on a 243. You know, when you get your owner's manual out for a reloading manual, there's always like a little story someone will do on a caliber, like the history of it and what it's used for and what's some great. And I shot a 243 in competition for quite a while before I adopted a 260. And one of the reasons I went from 243 to 260 is because I could see my impacts better. I can see my impacts with the 22 Creed the same now as I could with the 260, which is amazing, right? This is sort of why I'm so excited about this caliber. But here's the deal. The 243 article that was written in that Reading Reloading book that I have said about the 85 grain soft point or whatever bullet he was talking about was his preferred mule deer rifle. So 3,200 feet per second. I don't know what a 243 shooting, an 88 grain bolt will shoot. I know the 60 grainers and 80 grainers that we were shooting, I think the 58 grain VMAX were like 3,600 feet per second or something like that. But the BCs are awful. I mean, on an 88 or 85 grain bullet out of a 243, the BCs have got to be in the threes. I mean, there's just no comparison. And so you take a book that was written, 20 years ago, and they're saying, look, this caliber is perfectly capable of taking mule deer and undersized animals. Then you enter in 2 decades later a 22 caliber class rifle that has 88 and 90 grain bullets, same weight bullets available, that have 20 and 30 and 50% higher ballistic coefficiencies and less recoil. And someone explained to me why that's not a great mule deer cartridge. It was accepted 20 years ago in a 6mm with low BCs, right? Then you enter in this new era of rifles with high BC, heavy 22 caliber bullets. How is that not equivalent or better than the 243 shooting an 85 grainer? So if you really want to learn the art of shooting, getting that recoil down, it sounds silly, but the beauty of what's going on right now in the market today, and we're going to continue on this with part 2 next week, is we're going to talk about what it's doing with the combination of the weight of the rifle and why this just might be like that magic moment where the best of both worlds collide. So we're taking rifle stocks that now weigh in the 20-some ounce range, and we're putting calibers in there that recoil less than anything in this class could do in that weight. So as soon as you drop down to these ultralight hunting rifles, even a 243 shooting 105 grain bullet will wallop you. A 6.5 Creedmoor will bounce and jump all over the place in a 6 and 7 pound rifle. It's not in the heavy guns, of course, it tames it down, but when you get in the hunting class, there's a huge difference. But now imagine that we've got the pendulum swung so far that we can build an ultralight hunting rifle and have one that is so controllable and so manageable and so learnable that a brand new shooter out of the gate can walk in, step in, and literally like take the training wheels off of his bicycle within hours and be off to the races, competing with people with decades of experience. It's just magical to watch. So part 2 is going to be talking about the next step when we get into these rifles that we have the options to purchase now, like the 22 Creed, with the combination of the stocks. And I'm going to say that weight matters. You want to shoot the heavier guns better, you've got to add weight. But if you want to shoot world class, you have a choice now to have a caliber that's capable of doing that in the combination in an ultralight setup. So stay tuned for part 2 on next week. So before we finish up the podcast with some updates, I do want to say a quick thanks to MDT. MDT is a proud sponsor of the show, maker of world-class chassis, of course, and you can stop over to see all the great selections they have now, including the new HNT 26, which we have here in the shop. Fantastic hunting chassis. So if you've got a custom rifle or factory and you want to upgrade, you can stop over to MDT Tac. That's MDTTac.com and look for your chassis today. Also, we'd like to thank Wolf Precision's online long-range shooting school, where you can come and attend a world-class shooting school from the comfort of your own home. So if you want more information, stop over to wolfprecision.net. That's wolfprecision.net, and check out Wolf Precision's online long-range shooting school. All right, so to wrap this podcast up, a couple things that we had seen over the weekend. It was pretty cool. The wind meters, Kestrels, of course, we use them here at the school a lot. And just amazing to take like some of our kestrels that are 15 years old out onto the line and have them so well made that the barometric pressure, wind speeds, and all that, you could almost set them and the brand new one side by side. They still worked amazingly well. So what a great piece of equipment. We broke out some of our older ones in this class just to pass around, let people use. Also, I think something else that was pretty cool is just the gear and equipment and hunting clothing that we've seen. There's a lot of really cool clothes coming on the market that allow us, like, for example, go on these hunts and dress in layers and stay warm and dry and comfortable. And here at the shooting school in the spring, we get really unpredictable weather. We went from in the 80s and hot on Monday to, I think it was 38 degrees and 20-some mile-an-hour winds, which is cold. And it was just nice to see everybody prepared, getting some clothes on. We had a little bit of heat in there with the building, but the doors open, it doesn't do much. So a couple observations was just how well everybody was prepared with their clothing and such. The shooting school itself here, we only have a couple slots left at the end of the year. If you'd like to register, I think we have 4 slots left for here. We also have our winter class that we're going to be running in Swainsboro, Georgia. You can sign up for that. It's at a discount because we're going to have extra instructors there, as well as we're going to open it to 10 students. If you'd like to join us for 3 days, we'd love to have you. And then following the shooting school, the second week of November in Swainsboro, Georgia, we will have a 2-day moving target school. It'll be the weekend, a Friday afternoon sight-in and Saturday, Sunday class. Looking forward to have you like to join us. You can register online at wolfprecision.net. As far as the podcast goes, I'm really looking forward to continuing on this conversation. Just amazing. Like I'll have some pictures of my personal hunting rifle up over this weekend. So if you want to stop over to Facebook and see, my personal rig, I'm still hovering around that 10-pound mark, and just how much fun it is to shoot. And that's the reaction we get from these. But the lights are going on. Look, we have these training cartridges from the past that are coming of age into much more capable calibers that we know people will shoot better, and we know they'll be able to place the shot better. And I think that's what it's all about, is shot placement and having a confidence that you can do it. Like when he was shooting these gallon water jugs at 1,000, he was shooting a coyote. You could see he wasn't doubting himself. He wasn't wishing the bullet gets there. He wasn't like, maybe it'll get there, maybe it won't. He was concentrating, he was having fun, and he was putting those bullets where they were supposed to go, and he was doing it with a smile, which I think is the biggest thing. So stay tuned for next week's podcast. Looking forward to having you back. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a friend. We really do appreciate it. Also, if you can stop over and give us any type of 5-star rating on Google, or if you get onto any of the podcasting stations, including Apple, we would certainly appreciate it. It helps us a lot with our standings. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.